Okay, so welcome to our first ensemble programming session. The first of what we hope to do many, maybe weekly ones. It will be different people each time maybe, but it's just a bit of time for us to have a bit of fun ourselves, but also to kind of share the way that we work and to, get some learnings along the way. So even if we've done these exercises many times before or worked in these ways before, we're going to keep looking at them and trying to understand if there's some new things we can take away and things that we can integrate into our work. Each week we'll pick a different problem with different constraints. So it might be different tools or a different kata, and we'll have a little go at it. We'll work until the timer's up, and then we'll have a little retro at the end. Today's one John has designed. So I'm going to hand over to John to give a little intro, and then we'll get into it. John.
Yeah, so we're doing a TDD kata based on John Conway's Game of Life. So if you're not familiar with that, it would be good to look up and see what it's about. But basically, the idea is that you test drive something that's on the face of it fairly complex, and it has a visual element to it. And people trying to test drive this often get carried away with testing the visual aspect of it because they want to test the whole thing working rather than the just focusing on the core rules. So what we're going to be doing is ignoring the UI aspect of it. There is already code that, if you run it, will take the core of this program and display it in a terminal on a grid like this. Oh, you can't see my screen, so it doesn't work in this terminal because the formatting is all over the place. You need to run it on in a real terminal. But if you run Python main, it'll just display a grid with like random.
Fair enough.
But you don't have something installed, I think.
Yeah, I think that's okay, John.
Yeah.
I think we can just work on a lot.
We'll just, so the idea is to focus on the rules of the game. You iterate over all the cells in the grid. And the rules are that if a cell has fewer than 2 live neighbors, it switches off, it dies. There's a live cell with, and by neighbors, I mean you'll have the cell that you're iterating over, and it'll be the top left, top, then top right, and then the one to the left of it, the one to the right of it, and so on. So the cells that surround it. Live cell with more than 3 live neighbors dies. That means it switches off or goes from 1 to 0. Live cell with 2 or 3 live neighbors stays alive, and a dead cell with exactly 3 live neighbors becomes a live cell. That is, it turns from 0 to 1. I have an example of a test here, but it's not really a proper test. What I'd like to do is start with a failing test for one of these rules, then pass it to the next person to implement. Then they can write the next test, and they will pass it over to the third person to implement, and so on. So is that all clear, and can we start?
Everyone happy with that? I guess it's the one thing to note is that today we're trying to do this with Python, and we're using PyCharm with everyone connected using Code with me. So those are our constraints for this week. John, I think we can start.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with trying to write what the first test should be. We can discuss it as I write, but I'm going to start with just basing the tests on the basic rules of the game so that we can stay focused on the core rules. So live cell with what?
Live cell with fewer than 2.
2 live neighbors dies. Yeah.
So should we start with just the live cell? So just the live cell and all neighbors off.
Yeah, I think that seems like
so live cell. I would like to focus on a function that just returns the next state of the cell after applying the rules.
Yeah.
So returns.
Yeah, I mean, what's the bare minimum we can do actually?
When sorry, dies 0 and less than.
So, quick one, John. What's the bare minimal that we can do? It's like if an idle situation where all the cells are live. I think that's the default, and then we try to insert, and then you gradually build up on top of it.
Yeah, so I think we're doing. I think we can take different routes on this, Abby. I think we could say what happens if they're all live, or we could say what happens if they're all dead.
Yeah, anything which is the default. Yeah.
So we've already got the all dead one, right? That's the one above, I think. I say that it doesn't actually test the cell itself, right, John? It just tests that the grid hasn't changed. So I guess this one.
Is it worth? Sorry, go on, Tom.
I was just going to say, do you want this update? Do we with the assertion? Do we want to assert the shape of the whole grid, or do we just want to focus in on the one cell in the middle that we're checking?
Well, that's a good question. We could either have a function focusing on the one cell in the middle, or we test the whole grid. I mean, we could easily say that given this initial state, when you pass it through the rules, the next state will be
okay.
Yeah.
So when we run this g.update, we're expecting to update.
It's really not going to be. This is not going to fail. This is going to pass.
Okay.
It doesn't change. We should start with a test that actually causes a change.
Yeah. I thought that's the case we were going for. I thought we were going for a single live cell in the middle. I wonder if we create
right.
If we create the example in the code, I'm not sure that the function, the test function name's particularly great yet, but I think if we write the code and then describe what the test is doing, it might help us get to a better test font name.
Yeah. So here, I just realized that is absolutely pointless there. So what's the function we're calling?
G.update, isn't it? We
get
on
it. Update.
Does that mutate, or does it return a new? It returns.
Yeah. It's supposed to return a new grid, and then you want to run pair new grid to name.
The rules dictate that So surely we want.
Sorry, we want expected grid.
Yeah.
Expected grid. I don't know which way around is which, but
click on that compare function, then it should show you. I mean, that's the ID.
Yeah, expected and actual. Let's see the way around. Yeah.
Could we name the test something like test single cell dies?
When less than 2 neighbors.
With yeah.
Well, I guess it's not less than 2 neighbors, right? In this example, I know the rule that we're writing this example for is less than 2 neighbors, but this example is actually that a cell dies when there's no live neighbors.
Yeah.
That's true. Yep, when only covering that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nicer than what I suggested, Tom. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, because it's kind of intuitive to go to name them after the rules, but we're not testing the whole rule.
I don't know what you've written. We've not seen the grid yet, but I think there's a possibility that this might pass. If your grid already, if the default behavior of the grid is to return an empty grid, then this might not be a failing test. So let's have a look.
That's right. It is. So we should actually take that out. We should pass back the existing grid.
I mean, given that we have no tests at all, how about we just make this throw for now? Let's just raise not implemented or something like that. And because we have no tests, so we don't want stuff here that's not tested. I think you need 2 parentheses at the end.
Yes.
Or is it not implemented error? I think, yeah. 2, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So we should have a failing test, I hope.
Yeah, okay. So let's run the test.
Presumably with the right error. Have a look.
Oh, why don't I have that?
Just lost the test.
Let me run it again so it shows up.
Not implemented error.
Not implemented. Yeah. Cool. So who's next on the list? Mark, you want to implement?
Yeah, can do. Okay. So I am. Oh, hang on. I need to stop following you, John. So the test is failing, and I think the easiest way to do it would be to return what you had. No, this one. I want to take the empty grid. Okay, itself. Is that the right syntax?
Yeah.
Let's test run that. Run all the tests.
It's not self, it's
Oh, is it not?
It's grid. No?
You return G because this is like within the function.
Yeah.
That work.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, type of grid.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
So
Right. Next one.
Can I start with being really pedantic?
Yeah, go for it.
So we could move on to the next thing, but the thing that's bothering me And maybe we just choose to move past this, but in a real world, I would get upset about the fact that new grid and old grid don't have underscores, but expected grid does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I'm happy to do that refactoring for you. Before I carry on as we're green. I didn't even use a refactoring.
I think, and also the naming convention, like it in a typical test, is like actual versus expected.
Yeah, I did wonder that. So let me do that. Shift F6. Yeah, cool. Sure. Like that.
Yeah.
I'll check that change works.
Oh, hang on, it's not used. There's another line bit further down.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, there we go. I hadn't fixed it. Cool. That's why you always just use your factoring tools. So one thing I wondered, actually, just being even more pedantic, was whether we could just do this to make it a bit shorter.
Yeah.
Like,
just
little, yeah.
And you can move this expected grid on top with like an arrange, assert.
I think, I mean, for me, I to be pedantic, I would have them separate, because
cool. That's
range, act, assert, it's just easier to understand.
Cool.
I think expected will go on top.
And then do we want to just put the call this actual grid and then call update here? Like, I'm going to leave it like that, and then the next person can do a kind of continued, rather than us just debating refactoring.
Yeah,
cool. Okay, so I'm going to start thinking about the next test.
Before you do that, hang on, can you run the test to make sure they've passed?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Thank you. Lost track of it. Yeah, they were passing.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, so finish. Test. I'm going to leave it for now, just like that, and I'm going to create the example and then come back and name it, just to make things easier. So a quick copy paste job.
Hang on, hang on. There's something weird going in that up above. There's an update still hanging about on line 15 that shouldn't be there now.
Yeah, that's
15.
the arrange.
Oh yeah,
dot update function invocation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So moving on, I know that if I do another single cell or add, like, I can do that, but that's obviously going to still just pass, because we're in a position where we need to start actually implementing something. So I'm going to suggest the next simplest step is to just look ahead of us and behind us, or kind of that. So yeah, so kind of, I think that's probably the next easiest step. So that should, I believe, if I'm following the rules correctly, leave us looking like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes. So that what rule is that? That is the rule where
so test
it stays alive if it has two neighbors already. Live cell with two neighbors stays alive.
So I think it might be a bit too early to start talking about this, but for me, looking at the fact that we're like testing the whole grid like this is kind of like we're testing multiple cells at once, right? Like the fact that those other two cells have died is not relevant to the cell that we're focusing on, but we've had to incorporate that. So on one side, we're demonstrating how the game of life works, so almost like, you know, higher level acceptance test level, but we're talking about a single cell. We're only talking about that center one, even though we're modeling behaviors in the other one, which I think is interesting. I'm not going to suggest we change everything yet.
I think, well, that's true. You still need a grid even when you're testing one cell, because you need to test the cells around it. So you need at least a 3x3.
So that's true, but what I would suggest that we do is, instead of checking the expected grid is the assertion. Instead, we check just the cell that we're interested in, and we don't mind about the other cell.
Yeah. I was going to do that originally, and maybe the example test kind of misleads. There should be one that just says returns 1 if such and such. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I kind of agree with you. This is testing 2 rules at this point, isn't it?
But I think let's get this one done, and then decide if we want to change something or not.
Yeah.
Okay, I will run. Hang on. Excellent. I've lost the button to run all the tests. I can run this one test. Okay, so that test fails. Do you want to, Tom, it's on your screen. So do you want to just scroll to see if it's failing how we expect it to fail before?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we're expecting that we've got attribute differs. So we've got a 0, 0, 0 with a 1 in the middle, and what we've got back instead is a 0, 0, 0, 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's failing how we expect. So I'm going to pass on to Abby.
Okay. Just give me a minute. Okay, let me start executing this. What is the shortcut?
While you're doing that, I'm just gonna. Okay, cool.
Don't know why my terminal is not showing.
What I might do while you're doing this is just run all the tests, just so we can see that the original one was still passing.
I mean, can you see a test execution? Because when I am trying to do.
Yeah, test execution is fine on my screen.
Yeah, I only see it on Tom's screen. Not quite sure why.
Yeah, even I'm not able. Yeah, okay.
I think it's possibly a code with me thing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is.
You can run it in the terminal if you want instead.
What's that? Python.
So I had it in the. Let me paste it.
This one, Python.
With the discover.
Oh, it's got it's got a bit of a mess because of that.
Oh yeah, right. So you need to reset terminal.
I'm going to create a new terminal. There you go. Try it in there.
There we go.
Yeah. So it says 2 tests, run 2 tests. Okay, and yeah, 1 fail. Grid not as expected.
Yeah. So
the next thing that we need to do is we are expecting this, and I think I will open. Oh, sorry. Grid.py. Then I think we are returning as it is, and then I think what? I think we should we? Okay. And we are declaring it here. So how we are going to pass this G then? I think this is coming as a matrix, right? And here we were just simply returning it. So instead of this should be a matrix.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We should be performing an operation on matrix. Self dot
You could
matrix.
say old matrix equals or but no, we don't need that. Self matrix. Yeah, that's the.
And I think the bare minimal we can do is this, if I'm right. And our existing test should still pass one of the tests, and one should fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
No.
We've probably got both failing at this point, right? Because the first one needs to kill the cell.
Right. Yeah.
And it's no longer doing that.
So I think we need to fix the first two then.
I mean, Abby, you could just start by checking only those 2 neighbors.
Okay.
Like if
the thing is,
that was right.
Even though if you change it, that's a problem. Like your test will still fail for the first one then, because we are not testing the inputs.
Could we just do a really kind of basic if self matrix equals the thing we're giving it, return something different, create a different grid as a kind of just first pass?
I think I need to compare with G, right? Then still need G because that's the default.
No.
Okay. Compare with what?
Just take a copy of what we passed in.
Yeah, you could compare it with the whole. I mean, the matrix is not in the real program. Matrix is not going to be 3 by 3, but for the purposes of a first test, I suppose it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if we want to expand it out to work with different size matrices, then we should actually write tests with different size matrices.
Well, we should be testing for the neighbors, but we
can you please guide me? Like, what should we do here then?
So you've got something in your paste buffer, right?
Yeah.
So if you paste that in on the right of those equals.
Okay.
So that just so we've got a matrix right now, get rid because we're so it's not old grid. So the matrix is just the two-dimensional array.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're saying if the matrix is equal to the new, like this new input that we've got. So if you paste that in, get rid of the grid. So it's just
just the array.
Okay. So if it's that, then colon, and you want to return a grid which contains what we're expecting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then otherwise we just return that default empty one.
Yeah. Brute force.
It was like 0, 0, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You don't need that return at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Have we got some passing tests?
Is it running?
Hooray, well done. I call that brute force TDD.
So we've got our red, our green. So do we want to do anything to this before we move on to the next test?
I think we can move this on top as a generic, like, a practice instead of repeating in the test, like a small refactoring.
It's different each time though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it okay? I think I might have forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I have any suggestions for refactoring at the moment. But I'm definitely coming to your way of thinking, Tom, about just checking the cell we're interested in.
The main reason I think of doing that at the moment is because that's how we're expressing the test in the name, right? Yeah. So I think that would make sense. It does. Yeah, for me that makes sense. I think these type of tests have their place, but I think that could work as well. The other thing, really pedantic thing as well, but just going back to the grid, we've now got an if else branch with returns in both.
Yeah.
So I would probably say we either ditch the else or we capture a result variable and return it once at the end.
Yeah.
Pedantic, I know, and it's probably all going to change in the next test.
I've always wondered this, like instead of multiple returns, capture it in a variable and then return it bottom. What's the best way to do it? Like, because you are assigning a value to a variable which will consume some memory, rather than if you just return, it will save some memory.
Yeah, in theory, I think the best practice is to assign it to a variable, but early return is more efficient and is actually considered best practice in certain languages.
Yeah, because it's more readable in that way. And this is the whole idea of having this session of where we can talk about these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think early returns for me in you know, when we're writing imperative code, I prefer that. And the reason I kind of prefer it is because they're generally like guard clauses, right? So normally we get to the bottom and we return the thing that function is meant to return. The early returns are normally, you know, counter cases or you know, things like a guard condition, something that allows us, that stops us from getting to the bottom. And if that's not the case, if we've actually got legitimately two separate branches, then there's probably two separate functions there. And then maybe the function that returns that might return it more like an expression, or sorry, the function that brings those two different functions together might return it more like an expression, right? So it's like a ternary or an if then else. It's returning this or this rather than it being like a whole step of different things. Sorry, I'm not actually explaining that very well. But yeah, it's preference. But I do think, you know, there are people that stand heavily on both sides of the fence. I prefer the early return type of stuff with Python, but that's me.
I've done something similar, like kind of things in Java, where you need to iterate over a big list of things, and you use the keywords like continue and break. So if you've got a list and you're writing these kind of validation or checks, but you still want to continue, and if there is some kind of a breaking clause, you use the keywords accordingly or based on those conditions, where return is not appropriate, where you want to return something at the very end, but otherwise you use those keywords.
Sure. I think the thing that bothers me isn't whether or not we're using the else or the returns. It's the combinations of the returns and the else. Like for me, there's kind of a redundancy there, right? Like if we're saying if something returns something, you never need that else because it's automatically fallen through, or rather it's automatically returned. So you could get rid of the else and just have the second return, or use the else and explicitly, take this result or that result and return the result at the end. Yeah, it's just one of those little things that I often spot, and it just slightly triggers me. So I prefer one or the other. Obviously, in like an expression-based language, so if you're working in like a more functional way, then you always have an else, because the if must resolve to a value. But we're not doing that here, so or that Python doesn't work that way, so it's up to us.
I think you've done that refactor, Abby. Did you rerun the tests?
Yeah, I did.
Cool. So do you want to add the next test?
I feel like as we add the next test, it's gonna drive us closer to like wanting to test just that one value.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So what are you thinking, Abby?
Okay. Oh, I thought I have passed on the baton to Tom now.
No, so you make one pass, you implement the next one. Oh, sorry, write one pass, then write the next failing test. However, we are a mob, right? So because Abby's the driver, and John, I would like your guidance on this, because you've determined how this exercise should work and what the aim of it is. Should Abby be responsible for coming up with the next test, because that's his goal in this, or is he the driver and we should be advising him on the next test as like more like a mob approach?
I was thinking more like with the TDD ping-pong, where he comes up with he writes the next test.
Okay, so this is about,
but we can chip in.
No, I think that's good. So this is
right, and then pass the control to someone else.
Okay. So the emphasis here is on reinforcing the TDD practices.
Yeah.
Can I put a vote in for trying the kind of advisory panel behind the kind of driver next time, because I've been reading a book about it, and it's something I haven't tried, having that kind of advisory panel, and it sounds quite interesting.
So any live cell with more than 3 live neighbors dies if back overcrowding. Is that what we want to try?
Can I suggest not?
Okay.
Right. And the reason is that we've got one test that tests one rule, but I don't think one test is enough to cover that rule. I think there might be more tests.
That's true.
Needed for the first rule. So at the moment we're saying we've tackled any live cell. Sorry, which one is it? We've done the second one now. So any live cell with more than 3.
Yeah.
No. Which one have we just done? We've done any.
Do you want me to go to README?
Sorry, I've got the README open at the moment. So any live cell with. Sorry. Yeah.
The first rule needs another example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With.
Yeah.
It dies when there's one live neighbor.
So
you can copy the first one.
Yes, already copied. What
is that
changes
going
you want
to
to make
pass
it?
though? If we do the one live neighbor, because of the implementation.
Yeah.
Would we be better off looking? So, because I was wondering about if we kind of circle around the directions of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've gone now. Question here: do we want to talk about the directions in compass points or like top left, bottom left? I'm happy with either, but like so I'm going to say so far we've done a living cell with a neighbor north and south, and I wonder if we go as you've kind of done, look at east and west next, and we kind of circle around that.
Yeah.
And this is where I go to your suggestion, Tom, of we just check the cell we're interested in that lives or dies at this point.
I mean, it is going to fail as is, right? Because we're explicitly testing for that pattern. But I think that's not going to scale.
So what's the better word for this north and south live?
I think that's fine for now.
Okay.
So this is what east and west.
Yeah.
So we're about halfway. It's 11 o'clock. We're going to do our retro at 11:30.
Yeah. The problem, I mean, I think it would be too easy to just continue the same pattern of working, like Tom says. And if you're going to actually write an implementation for this, you end up with something more complex than just testing north and south. But yeah, let's see where it leads.
So I think, I've updated the test. Now I think, Tom, you can continue with the implementation.
Cool. Thanks, Abby. So I've got a failing test. I got all of the tests. Let's run all of the tests. So we've got one failing test here, presumably because we got a nice printout. We don't have a nice printout. So we've got this one here where we expect just the one in the middle, but we've got our empty one.
Yeah.
So we've fallen through to this return case here.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to keep this really, really simplest change possible. And I'm just going to go with that. And it's got some weird indentation issues. And that should be our green, I hope. Okay. So now it's ugly.
Yeah.
And it's time to try and work out what we want to do.
Yeah, I mean, this to me cries out for refactoring, no?
Yeah. So are we gonna, is it time yet to start counting neighbors? Anyone got an opinion?
Yes, I think
I wondered if we looked at something like
not counting. I would say checking explicitly for those neighbors. That would be the first iteration.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we should start counting just yet. I think we should just check.
I would say, yeah, just do some, like still kind of brute force, but less, if you know, more specific. If matrix.
Check
So
the specific
now
point.
we actually need to iterate. So.
I mean,
So before iteration, is there something we can do?
I wonder if we could just check, like we're testing in the assertion for specific points. Could we also do something
yeah,
like
we
just to collapse it down? But just instead of having the matrix looks exactly like this, we can say that point. What would it be? 0, 1, and
I like that.
Actually,
2,
0,
1.
Yeah,
sort of.
This one. No, not like that. Like that.
Sorry, what's the -1? Oh, okay, the one from the end. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the sorry. It's y first, isn't it? It's
yeah.
Y then x.
It's xy or
it's yx because it's first it's the row, then it's the column.
That 0 is not going to be right though, yeah. That 0's corner.
Sorry, x. 1 we want. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 1. Yeah. And yeah, something like that. No.
Yeah.
That doesn't quite look right to me.
Oh, Tom.
So
-1, 1, matrix 1.
So if we're looking at we've got the rows, the first one, right? So if the row is the first, we want the 0
yeah,
and the end one. So the 2.
Yeah.
Oh, we want this.
yeah, this will be.
We're doing exact coordinates.
Yeah. Yes, you're right.
Sorry. So I was getting confused.
I'm going to hope that's
yeah. So shall we take this out and try and run that instead?
So if I take that, that's still green.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So
Okay.
let's do the same for the second one again. Let's tap that in. So if we're now going column. So in both cases, it's going to be row 1. And it's going to be 0 and 2.
Yeah, right.
Let's run that. That's still green. Let's take the other one out. Run it.
Yeah, like this is very small changes, and it's quite methodical.
Yeah. So should we
actually manage to refactor it?
So shall we, if it was me, what I think I'd do here is I'd maybe make that check. Like we've got 2 checks that we can iterate over, right?
Yeah.
So in order to iterate that, we need.
Wait a minute. Before we do that, these return the same thing. So
yeah.
These 2 checks can be combined.
I think I'd prefer not to. Just because if we're going to start having ands, we're going to start combining ands and ors, and it's just going to be a bit of a confusing thing to think about.
Sure,
I think for me,
this is the same rule, Tom. It's not a different rule.
It is the same rule, but we're going to end up with something that looks horrible like this, which bothers my brain. I don't even know.
Write it like that. You can write them.
I don't even know if these parentheses are required. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get to a place ready to do that before I do that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, simpler to read at this point because we're going to change this fast. And I think it allows not have to think too much about.
I don't think we should start iterating yet, though.
I don't want to.
No,
I want to start simplifying those expressions first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole idea is not to compromise the readability as of now.
So are we considering that refactor done, or do we want to take a next step in this at this point, or do we want to go back?
I personally think I'd like to refactor further.
Okay, cool.
But I'm happy not to.
What are your suggestions on a refactor?
So if we look at these two ifs here, we can see that we've got like 4 values coming into these, right? So if I can extract those out, then I can start to create something that's, you know, that can be like parameterized. So we'll have the same thing twice, and then we can feed 2 sets of inputs in.
Okay.
So that for me might be something like, I guess because we're just focusing on 2, I'm going to go with this. So I'm going to say extract this as a variable, only this occurrence. Let's call that cell row 1. Is that one? What was it? No, cell row. Cell 1 row. I'm calling them rows and columns because that's the only way my head can think about it at the moment.
That's fine.
Cell 1 column. And then we can go here again and we can say cell 2 row and cell column. I'm quite aware of, we've got quite a lot of like magic numbers in here, even just like the live and whether it's alive or dead, right? 0 or 1, but that's later. So I'm going to do the same with this. Sorry.
I'm wondering if this is quite a big step.
As in,
question, like would no. The more would a smaller, like I'm thinking like small step refactoring. Would the first thing not be something like where we create a like I'm assuming what you're doing is going to create a function up what we've got here in the, you know, cell 1 and cell 2 sort of thing. Is it not worth starting just like pulling it out into a function of is cell alive and just having like taking smaller steps? Or
I think so. I mean that will actually, I think this will get us there in the same thing. I mean, for me at the moment, each one of these is a small refactoring.
Okay.
It's like, this is green, right? I've not broken anything.
Yeah.
If I go like that and I say cell 1 column, then run it again. That again, that's a refactoring for me. That's what small scale refactoring for me is just that, right? Like we're keeping it going, and I'm not making this any more complicated in my head, at least. I'm just naming constants at the moment.
So you're just removing the magic numbers.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. That makes sense. But
the reason is that now these 2 blocks of code are identical, right?
Yeah.
So we could extract that whole block out into a function, or like you say, we could start looking at extracting just these individual bits out into functions.
Yeah.
I'm happy with either of those. Shall I do it as a function?
The whole thing, or what? Condition.
And I think you can replace that 1 as well with something like expected.
This one?
Yeah.
It should be alive, right? Like that.
Yeah, something like live or whatever. Yeah.
I think,
So let's do that. But that is, that's all of these then.
Yeah.
And we should, if we're going to do that, we should probably start looking at changing all of these. Maybe this uppercase, so it's a constant as well.
I think so. Yeah. I think leave the grids as they are for now. I think that will change in a bit.
Yeah, maybe just extract a function with the condition.
Just the condition.
Yeah.
So should I do? I'm going to do the condition with both of these in at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So
why don't you call it if north and south neighbors are alive?
It's not north and south anymore, right? It's dependent on these inputs that come in.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
say neighbors, right?
Yeah, but it's just 2, isn't it? So if I call it like R both. I'm going to put an underscore because it's a private method.
Yes, it's going to be private. The business logic is specific to this function. Sorry,
Yes.
this class.
So that's done both right now. I know that I've given it a rubbish name, but I'm just doing that because I can. So that should still be there. Now this alive isn't necessary because that's passed in. So let's move that constant into the other into here.
I think the function name should be like are dead, right? The neighbors are dead. Only.
No, we're checking explicitly.
Oh yeah, then we are killing it. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
So we've now got that tested twice. So what I might be inclined to do, got some choices here. I kind of want to wrap all of those up into
an input very object array or something like that.
Yeah, something a bit
more.
Why
don't we pass as an argument which cell it should be checking?
That's what this is doing, right? But it's doing it as individual values. Yeah. So should we create a cell as like a tuple of row and column?
Correct.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
And should we do that using just a Python tuple, or do you want to actually start creating like types, like a class or something?
Should we do Python tuple for now, and then if it gets a bit, if there's complexity where we need to do more, we can.
So cell 1 is 0,1, cell 2 is 2,1. So there are two cells. Now we need to extract those from here. So cell column becomes, I just want to do the small change first and then combine it, I think. Or should I just, I know, let's do this instead. So we've got that there. So now let's pass in cell 1. Let's add a thing into here so I can use the, what's it called? It's the change method, change signature refactoring. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add cell 1 as an additional argument to this. Why is it not? Oh, because it wants me to give it a default value. Default value equals cell. Oh, cell 1. Now, if I do that, it would give me the refactor. So that should have, my test should still be green, right? Because it's introduced that here. It's passed it in up there. I've not changed anything yet. But because we're still dependent on those. So we now need to extract the two values out of them and replace them into here. To do that in Python, how do you get the first element out of a tuple? Do I have to destruct?
Like an array index.
Okay, so if I do like cell 1 row, comma, cell 1.
Oh, you can extract them, yeah.
Like that. So that goes there, then these two can disappear. And I run that again.
I don't think you created, oh, no,
what did I break? What did I break?
I didn't think you created a second cell. If you scroll up just to about line 30, yeah, so for the first example, you've created the cells and the tuples, but you haven't for the second bit.
I'm only doing cell 1 at the moment.
Oh right, okay. Yeah, but you're not.
But it'll fail.
Right. Okay.
So at the moment it's green. What I've got is I've got these two passed in, which are still being used, and I've got this one that isn't being used. Right. So I thought I could destructure it like that. Cell 1 row equal and comma cell 1.
Yeah, that should work.
Cell 1 column. Maybe I used the wrong let's try that again. No, that's broken.
So I think, so if you go scroll up, you haven't, so cell 1 on line 17, cell 1 is 01, but
see,
it should be on line 30, it should be 10. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark.
I hadn't made myself very clear, sorry.
Yeah, so that should be
the other way around, basically.
Yes. Okay,
now it should pass. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. So now we can remove two parameters from here. And now we want to do the same. So we can remove some stuff up here.
Yes.
The same here. Ooh. So that's that. Now we can go for cell 2. 2 equals 2, 1. And cell 2 equals 1, 2. Good. My Copilot is kicking in, I think. So we got that now. So let's add another. Let's make a change to that signature again. So that's this one, change signature. We can add cell 2, default is cell 2, refactor. Sorry, I don't know if you're seeing the pop-ups.
No.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, cell 2 row. That's green, and we remove the parameter, run that again. So now that's green. We can remove these from here. Oh, wrong one. Remove statement, remove statement, remove statement, remove statement. So now we've got something that I'd be more willing now to make that into like a little loop or something, like turn that into an array and iterate over it. And then we just end up with that.
Okay, but when you say iterate, and we're only interested in those two.
Yeah, for now. So I'd do something like this. I'd say case. I'm just going to call them cases. I don't know what they're called at the moment. And we can just do cell 1 and cell 2.
Oh, I see. Iterate over the cases. Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Okay,
so that would be our. Should we do? Let's do it like I'm going to do an array. That can be our first one, and then this thing here can be for case cell 1, comma cell 2 in cases. Oh, too much Copilot there. Then we can say if that thing.
yeah.
That should still pass, I think, right? So if I run that now, that's green. Now I can remove this statement. Now I can remove this statement. And now we can move the next set of cases into this list. So we go 1, 0 and 1, 2. We should still be green. And hopefully we can now remove this. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice, Tom. I think that's good enough refactoring for.
Okay.
So I don't know where we are on the time left. Have we got?
Well, it's 11:20, so we've got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Do we want to
Do we want to add another case?
Test case?
Yeah, I think we're in a position when another test case would be good.
Okay, so I'm going to do an easy one. I think I'm going to actually just come for another 2 cell 1.
Okay.
Right.
Continue looking. Yeah, and doing diagonals now this time.
I'm going to even be weirder than that. I could do a diagonal. Should we do a diagonal?
No. I mean,
what about
in
the
all
diagonal?
honesty, I wonder if we carry on actually thinking about it. I think, are you suggesting like north and east sort of thing? So kind of
diagonal
one above, one to
will
side.
be the same. A diagonal.
Yeah. Sorry.
A diagonal one will be the same.
So it would still, I think diagonal neighbors count, don't they?
Yeah. So I think this is quite interesting because this is getting us to a point where it's going to drive a bit of a change. So I think if we go for anyone, right? Like if I go for north, I'm going to go what we say east and west. So if we go, let's go north and west.
Yeah.
North and west. So that's like that 0.
Yeah.
1.
That's north and east being
North and east.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Good Boy Scout here.
Yeah. And I've also got some indentation problems there. So I'm going to run that and run that. But I think, there's our failing test. So I think what's great with this now is I'm going to hand it over to someone else. But what I think this is starting to do, right, is we are starting to create like a whole load of tests for one rule. And we know that to cover them all, we're going to have to like do every single angle. So I think maybe we're moving towards a test with a data provider, like a parameterized test, with a list of all the different ones. And that test then has the name of the property, the rule that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
A nice place to converge on. But at this point, I think I'm going back to John.
Yeah. And I think also, like I quickly, just worth saying, I kind of quickly realized as you started talking about my mistake about going for diagonals. So I was kind of jumping the complexity just too far. Like look at different ones on the same kind of axis that we're currently exploring was a much better choice. So
that said, I think you're right, but I also think that we're actually, like the way that this has got to now, where we've got these cases, I think that actually any combination is no different to any other, right? What we haven't got is we haven't got counter. You know, this doesn't cover like the counter example. So when we come to more than two, then at the moment this will fail. But this is good. I like this. We've also got to consider one, just one
row column.
Yep, true.
Is it row? It's row column, isn't it? Or is it cell?
I think it's a row and column. So I think this is fine. And then 1, 2, just run the test.
No, it's not 1, 2. It's
0, 2 actually.
0. No, it's 0, 1.
Yeah.
1. Sorry.
It's this one.
Yeah. No, if it's that one, it's row column, right? So it's 1, 0. Oh no, that's the one above. So we've. Yeah, so the first one of that case, so the first one of line 21, 1, 0, that's the west one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the west. Okay, 0, 1, and 1, 0.
And that was right. Oh, it's whichever way around. I think that's right. No test found.
I think you're running in the main class.
Yeah, you've got to be in the other window. Yay, green.
Awesome.
We've still got a bit of time, so what refactorings?
Well, let's see.
I had an interesting thought about a tuple, renaming all of that. So we've got these kind of lists of tuples. We could turn them into constants of like north, south, east, west, so that like, because we're using that language, we should probably use that in the code.
I think that's really interesting, because I was thinking the same thought, Margaret, and I think that if we look at them, right, those coordinates are absolute coordinates in the grid. So actually, when you start considering other cells, the north, south, east, west, doesn't make any sense, but it does in relationship to the cell you're looking at.
Yes.
I think if we extract them out, that's great, and then probably as it will evolve, they will become like relative, so they'll be like -1 and 1 and so forth.
Yeah.
I like
the thing is, as we work towards the final implementation, you know, we're eventually just going to be counting neighbors and acting on each case. It's not, it's not going to help us to extract names of the directions very much, because we'll eventually be getting rid of them, I think.
Well, I think the directions will still persist, but so at the moment, our tests are all concentrating on the center point. Yeah. And we're not moving around the center point. We're just looking at that functionality. Later on, we'll probably look at what happens when we're looking at something that's in the north or something like that. But the language will still always persist. But currently we're going north, and it is the one at the top middle. But later we might start using language like north of, and it's the one that is north of the one we're looking at. So the language should still persist, because it allows, it gives us a nice human reference point for what we're looking at. We're looking up from or north of, and stuff like that. So it allows us to have that kind of, that it just allows us to kind of think about it in a nice human way, rather than like coordinates, which are like on a grid system that's not kind of normal to us, if that makes sense. It's not, we're not looking at a map. We're not thinking about it as a map. We're thinking about like the direction. So that's why I'm suggesting we kind of put the direction into words in our code. And they,
I think both points are valid there. I think what John is saying is that as time goes on, we'll stop. The logic itself no longer says like, is it north, is it south, is it east, is it west? It just says how many.
Yeah.
But the calculation of that how many is what's the north, northeast, east, southwest. So I think while the directions won't be so prevalent through the code, I think still the calculation of those of like how many neighbors of that is good expressed, saying like what's the north one, what's the south one, what's the east one, add it all together.
Yeah.
Abby, I think
I was personally inclined toward refactoring the test now with the parameterize as you suggested, because that will give us a really nice way of testing our theories, because we have already done a refactoring of our code, which is quite nice and clean now. I think the next step and as evolution of the code should be focused on refactoring the test as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
cool. That's the
just thinking ahead as how you would continue this in a very methodical, test-driven way. And of course, you'd have to cover all the other cells, right, to test if there could be other two that are alive. So how do you jump from that to the step of just counting them? Do you add, just all the cases right down there, and then go, okay, well, now we need maybe a function.
in some ways, I think, hang on, what was the first test that we had? In some ways, we've actually kind of jumped a bit further ahead, right? Because like really this test, really, like if we look at all of these tests, like we've only got one test that covers this original case, right, which sets it back to 0. We haven't got the case that checks 0, 0, 0, all zeros stays all zeros.
Yeah,
like,
but I don't think that's important, because
it is important. It's the base case that like you need you've got base cases that that have to stay true as you add other cases on top. So I think missing that is significant, because these ones here, if we say like here, this one's 1, right, we can make all of these tests pass here below without setting, like we didn't need both of these, right? Like the logic that we've got here is only really checking that currently that this one, or this one. Oh no, sorry, that's not true, because we have got the ands in there, but we haven't got the one case that builds upon it. I think if I was doing this, I'd have started with the empty case, then I would have covered all the 1 cases, although we've got that problem where they all result in empty. Oh yeah, that's a problem.
So should we stop and take a
I do agree with that.
Reflect on it.
I think we had, because when we came into it, we had like that test actually existed and we deleted it. Whereas I don't think we should have deleted it. We should have probably deleted the code and then made that test pass and then continued. And I think we'd have probably been in a little bit of we'd probably got to that place that you suggested.
Yeah.
At least having like that one additional test between what we're now doing of like, oh, it's got 1 neighbor. So yeah.
I'm just putting some arbitrary questions down here. Did you?
Can we just take a short 5-minute? Then I'm just going to get a drink.
All right, I'll get these down while you're doing that, John. But it'd be good to carry on, because it will be a gap in the video.
Are we coming up to retro time?
Right.
So that's the great thing about mobbing, isn't it? Like if you need to go and make a new cup of tea, breathe some fresh air, whatever it is, the mob can, ensemble, the ensemble continues.
Yep.
Live stream making coffee.
So I've put these 3 headings here. I think we could have an anything else one at the bottom. So I've put a section here like, what did you learn from the kata itself, like doing the TDD kata with Conway's Game of Life. What did you learn from this experience together, the way that we've chosen to mob like the fact that we've done this kind of like round robin approach. What did you learn from using these tools? So specifically the code with me. We haven't got in the video the struggles that we went through to get this working.
Yeah.
And so like there was definitely some uptime there. When would you use this configuration? So would you use this kind of like TDD ping pong style approach for day to day? Would you use it as a workshop, and anything else? Please put any ideas in. Should we just like a couple of minutes, just put a few items on under these each? Or should we just talk it through and jot down our thoughts as we go through them?
I'm up for both. Doing your first suggestion is going to be a real nice test of the tool we're using, because we're all going to be trying to edit the same line at the same time.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll do something like this, so that it makes it a bit easier. Okay, Mark, I won't.
Okay, yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. Cool. It's probably actually a sensible way of doing it. Okay, cool.
Oh, that didn't work.
I think one of the key thing based on like that's something I've learned from pairing and mobbing is when you are working solo, you make very, very silly mistakes and you spend up like an hour just trying to figure it out, what went wrong. Like for example, on line number 17, we have what did you learn from the exercise rather than form. And this is something happens while you're coding as well. I mean, I've been in, I'm sure like many of us would have been in a situation where we were working solo. There is an error occurring and we spent like hours and hours just trying to figure out what went wrong. And then suddenly you get one of your colleague come and have a look into your code and they come, okay, I think you should add a dot here, or instead of calling this function, you should call that function from an API, and it works. So while pairing and mobbing, because it has this implicit continuous reviewing system available, it saves a lot of time.
Do you want to jot something down on the list for that, Abby?
Yeah. Anything else should be for something we can improvise upon, right? I believe.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we can take some improvements from all of these things.
Oh, I forgot to put my name.
Well, I don't think Game of Life is unnecessarily complicated to fit in now, but the whole game is, and maybe the kata should have focused on just that one.
I think, John, it depends on what the activity is, right? But if you were to sit down and do this kata on your own, and you have done it many times before and you're familiar with the rules, you can probably bang out a solution very, very quickly. I think that it's fine. You can get through it if you've got experienced people that are quite aligned with it. But I think that if you are also putting the emphasis on other things, we're debating options, we're mobbing, we're doing talking about TDD, then to fit all of that in with Game of Life is an hour in an hour is quite challenging. And I think that actually brings me to a point I said somewhere else, which I've completely lost now. Where was it? I can't find it. Yeah, you need to about considering different approaches, right? It's not about rushing to get the solution done.
Yeah. Well, I think we did fine.
Building the best solution.
No need to complete it. It's a good exercise for practicing test-driven development, because there's a lot of discussion on how you approach testing something like this.
Yeah.
So do we want to go through each of the questions as a kind of retro? So should we start with, I think we started kind of covering the what did you learn from the exercise? I think you started talking about it, Tom. Has anyone else got anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the many different approaches that people suggested.
Yeah. I really enjoyed doing this one. I'm going to say, John, I'm really thankful that you picked this one, because I once went to the London Code Dojo and paired with someone for about an hour and a half on not this one, but the next move in the game of Go, which has a very similar kind of problem and very similar way of catching you out. And we got caught out for an hour and a half on the first test. So yeah, this was quite nice to learn from my mistakes.
I think the other thing that we've already talked about, but I'll jot it down anyway, was I think we skipped too far ahead with the tests. Yeah.
And sometimes you only find that out when it bites you later.
Yeah, and that's experience.
In which case did you think we skipped too far ahead?
I think we should have covered that base case first. And
I disagree. I think we did, fine without covering that particular base case, and it wouldn't have.
I think we did fine in that we haven't covered it, like it hasn't affected the rule that we focused in on.
Yeah.
But I think for me, what I find when I'm doing TDD is the test that I'm putting down. It's kind of like building a foundation. So I want to get like the simple base cases and also edge cases down first to stop me making going down the wrong path later on. So like what I might find is that if I tackle some more complicated things or don't protect myself for things that are invalid, then when I move to a more complicated step, I might implement something that's like ignores these base like invariants, these base rules. And then
so you would have just had another test with that case and it would have passed.
It wouldn't have passed because I guess the point is we already had the test for that, right? Like the test that you had originally was that test.
Yeah.
It tested that the grid didn't change, but we took it out. So I think if I was to do this again, I probably wouldn't have that first test there. I'd probably, like, if I was going to bootstrap this project, I'd just have that the not implemented error in there and start from that first test.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Just looking at the time, we spent about 2.5 minutes on this question. Should we skip to the next one?
Let's do it.
I know we could talk for ages on everything. It's just like, I know we've got limited time, so should we skip to unless there's anything burning someone wants to say?
Well, Abby's just put continuous learning in this section. Have you got anything you want to add on that, Abby?
No, I think that's the best thing about pairing and mobbing, where you keep on learning on. So it's one of the best ways I have come across for continuous learning.
Cool.
Yeah. So so let's go into the what did you learn from working together? So Tom, you've got a comment on that one?
Yeah, so I think that you keep relearning this, trying to rush that solution. We've talked about this a bit already, but trying to rush that solution is not the goal of working together like this. It's coming up with the right solution, the best solution. I think it's often the thing that gets challenged. Like if you put like a whole load of developers in a room working on one story, but this is, this can't be efficient. How can you do it as quickly as, working individually? And you actually might feel like you're slowing down, right? Like you're having these debates and you're not just like choosing the first solution that comes to your mind. And I think when you do it your way, you just like, okay, yeah, that's the right way. That's the right way. That's the right way. That's the right way, done. And you deliver a thing, but it may not be the best it can be. And I think that's what working together is. It's, you know, you've got an idea, you want to go through with your idea, but people are challenging it. You know, listen to the alternatives, because your idea might not be the best idea.
Yeah, and I think also, like, especially like learning to understand the ideas quickly enough. Like at the moment, we've not. I don't think I've ever paired with Abby or you, Tom. I have paired with John. Like working out how people discuss things and stuff, like, is something that's going to come. Although as we said, we're going to be swapping out the ensemble every week probably. So, you know, you might kind of learn from us that, you know, there might be some long-lived people who have like kind of get this symbiotic link where someone just goes, oh, do it, and then someone goes, oh yeah, okay, starts typing. But yeah.
And that second point I said is about the driver making the decisions. That's what I don't like about this kind of ping pong approach. I'm going to cover the one that I've actually put one further down about this, so we can skip over that in a bit. But I think that this has its place. I think it's good for enforcing the TDD process. I think it's good for, you know, initiating people into this way of working. You know, maybe like if you sit there, it's like, how are we all going to work together? Well, you know, like if we each do a bit each and we all work together and we go down the room, it brings people together, and it you know, it gets people to sort of understand that it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
But I think that having the driver being the person that's like, watch me as I do this, especially like that refactoring phase that I did earlier on, right? That was longer than anyone else did. So halfway through, you know, as much as I was like confident in the changes that I was making, the path I was going, I was also confident that like I was hogging the seat at that point.
Yeah. I think that's where the point of actually that navigator kind of talking someone through it, like, because I was a bit like, I didn't understand what you were doing, so yeah, I might have been a better driver at that point, and you navigate it so that I get that kind of, oh, okay, I'm making the movements, I'm doing that stuff now, it makes more sense in my head. It took me a little bit longer to get on board with it. I kind of just sat back quietly on that.
Yeah, because I guess that's the point. I'm not driven to explain myself properly, because I'm doing the work. I know what I'm doing, so I'll just do it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited to try that, if we can try that next time, because I've just finished reading the Saman coaching technique, and it talks all about that kind of that way of that, all of this kind of stuff in ensemble programming. Are there any other points someone wants to make on this question, or should we skip to the next one where we have got quite a lot of different points? John, anything to add on this one?
No.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to assume silence. So we'll go on to so what did you learn from using these tools? And I put the first one in, and it wasn't something I learned, it's something that I've forgotten about because I haven't used Code With Me for a little while. I spent a little bit of time after just watching nothing happen on my screen, because I forgot to follow the new driver. And what I forgot about was there's a really lovely feature where you can force everyone to follow me. So as the driver comes in, they force everyone to follow them. So you're immediately where their cursor is and stuff like that. And it just makes it a little bit easier. I think John and I used that quite a lot when we were working together a few months ago. It was quite useful. Cool. Abby.
That's self-explanatory. It saves time actually. So
okay. Cool.
I think,
and it is like continuously deliverable, rather the end solution is deliverable rather than something to be reviewed.
Yeah.
I think I really like the tooling. I think that Code With Me and VS Code Share and all of these things are great, especially because they remove the barrier of swapping driver. But obviously people do have their own key bindings, their own tools that they like. You know, if you're not coming from IntelliJ, then, you know, it might feel a bit alien. But again, you know, as we said earlier on, I think the mob is actually working more slowly and methodically than fast, and, you know, needing to know all their high-speed performance key bindings. But I think the setup is a really important thing, whether it's, you know, this tool, whether it's, you know, you're doing screen sharing and swapping over, whether it's VS Code. If you try and jump into a team and just do it the first time, it could put people off, right? You could spend hours trying to get the thing working, and then they don't want to do it again. But once you get used to the process, then obviously it's easy. So I think maybe even separating the setting up from the doing, if you're going to do this with a team, is, you know, maybe before you run a workshop or invite a team to start working in this way, you have a little session of like, let's get your tooling set up and let's choose the tooling that works for us.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, if it's a public thing that you're doing, I probably should consider VS Code. It's got you know, a browser-based IDE that you can join really easily. There's no faff.
And I suppose one to add to the list of things we can try actually with the everyone prefers their own IDE is we can try FluBits, which just basically is a plugin, and you can plug it into all the IDEs. And I could be in Emacs, you can be in Vim, someone else can be in IntelliJ, you know, VS Code, and we don't have to have that argument of which we're using. So yeah, that's cool. Any other points on this one about the tooling?
No.
Cool. Okay. When would you use this configuration? I misread that, so I'll skip over. Tom?
Yeah, I might have actually maybe not explained that well enough. So we'll just go with whatever people have assumed it to be. But what I meant by that is you know, this particular mobbing in a ping pong way, you know, write the test past the keyboard. And for me, I don't find that approach, and this is the same for ping pong pairing, I don't find that approach useful for like an 8-hour day. I find it really, really useful for, again, bringing people, getting people used to TDD, or getting people used to the activity of collaborating, of working in a pair or an ensemble. But I think I find it's not so helpful if you're working on, you know, larger, longer problems. That's me personally. I'd love to hear from people that, you know, if people do work that way for extended periods on real code bases. I'm sure some people have tried it, but for me, it's a great learning tool. It's a great tool to have in your toolbox, but it's not such a useful to like dogmatically do it as your way of working.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You can't be ping-ponging all day.
Yeah, the only time I would use it in production stuff and have used it in production stuff is where the person I'm pairing with is less used to these. Is literally like they've done introduction to TDD, they've kind of done something, you know, really simple kata like, you know, FizzBuzz or something, and then we're going to keep that same pattern as we move into some production code, and it might be like a day or 2 days or half a day, like depending, and then we'll move to kind of, once they've got that kind of ethos of I will write the test and then I'll write the code. Once they've got that and that's kind of ingrained and that's kind of muscle memory, then we'll switch to kind of timing it or just a different pattern. Cool. Abby, you added a couple of things on this.
I think my comments are regarding mobbing. I think I've seen it working quite, you know, really well when you are dealing with a complex problem where you can get, you know, opinion from everyone, and also as something at the start of an engagement or a project or whatever we want to call it, because while delivering solution, I've worked on it and it proved quite well, because, you know, that the whole idea of pairing and mobbing is that it's the team's responsibility rather than an individual taking the ownership of something deliverable. So if a decision was being taken, it is the team's call rather than an individual. So yeah, and also, you know, all of the things that we have discussed. And then the second thing that I mentioned was, I think while you have, let's say you have started working on something and you're working on front end and back end, there is a pair and they have got some kind of dependency. I think pairing or mobbing at the beginning or for some time has paid us a lot, where, because, you know, we use something called like a contract between, like a JSON contract or whatever we are discussing. So you can deal with those kind of problems, like reducing the communication gap. Because if you have started working on front end, assuming something, and there's other pair who have started working on something with some assumption, at some point of time you came to an understanding, oh, we assumed something wrong. So it reduces all those communication gaps.
Yeah. Just looking at the time, we've got like a couple of minutes left. So on the anything one, John and Abby, you've added, you want to just pick one each and quickly scan over yours?
I think I will pick up my first one. I think we should start when we started this exercise or session. We directly jumped on technical discussion, like, okay, this lives bit. I think we should start with more generic terminologies and simple what is the value that we are trying to add, and think like in a layman terminology, because I think we should not expect that people will be aware of this particular kind of kata quite well. So
yeah, totally agree. Should have shared the screen explaining what the whole thing is. I just wanted to jump into it. That's why.
I think sadly we'd lost a bit of time on the setup, and also that
it
wasn't working in the terminal. So yeah, I never mind. It was first effort.
So any other burning points on this?
No.
I would like to just pick up one that Abby put, which is that line 41 there. We should take a pause and make sure everyone gets an opportunity to share their views. I feel like I did cut people off a few times, and I think that is really, really important. So thank you for raising that, Abby.
Yeah, I think in a mobbing session, or in a group setting, that's one of the most important thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely the right thing. So can I close this with a question to everyone that's not on here? Do we do it live stream next time?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Excellent.
It was great.
Let's get that set up. That can be our definite thing for next time.
To go back just to quickly on one of my points, I think we should do this kata several times from scratch and see what comes out, because it's going to be different every time, right? We'll probably learn something new. We'll discuss different possibilities for implementing the same thing.
I think
as you go through it, you get through the first cases very easily, and then you get to the next cases, which were a bit more complex, and it's a really great problem for TDD, because it's not clear where to start. And we usually advocate writing an outside-in test first, but in this case, you can regard, and we didn't show that, which is a shame, but regard the moving grid as a UI, and say, well, it's valid to focus on the core calculation.
Yeah,
if you want to test drive this as an option.
Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed this, and thank you, John, for getting this set up and giving us an interesting problem.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
See you all later.